Hello everyone, welcome to our very new series called the Neuromaths Road to Residency, brought to you by the Student Interest Group in Neurology at Dow Medical College. My name is Tahir Ali, and I'm a fourth-year medical student at Dow Medical College. I'm joined by my co-host, Mariam Abdul Wahid.
Hello everyone, I am Mariam Wahid and I'm a final year student at Dow Medical College and I welcome you all to the first episode of our brand new series.
We have a very special episode for you guys, and especially the medical students who are focused and want wish to pursue neurology in the United States. Today, we'll talk about one of the most important building blocks for the residency application, that is the CV. In today's episode, we'll break down all of the key elements that go into a competitive CV, especially for a neurology match. We'll talk about research, we'll talk about electives, we'll talk about extracurricular activities, and most importantly, steps forward in your medical school transcript. So, and we're not doing it alone. We are joined by a esteemed guest for today. Firstly, we have Dr. Maya Shoaib. She's a neurohospitalist at Peace Health Southwest. She graduated from Dow Medical College in 2014. She completed her residency at the University of Oklahoma and pursued a fellowship in vascular neurology at Austin Health. Additionally, we have Dr. Ghazala Perveen. She is an associate professor affiliated with the University of Texas Southwestern. She serves as the Associate Program Director for Clinical Neurophysiology and Epilepsy Fellowship. She is also a member of the Neurology Residency Admissions Committee at University of Texas Southwest. Lastly, we have Dr. Tamrina Hanif. She is a graduate of Dow from 1998. She is an Associate Professor of Neurology and currently serving as the Director of Epilepsy Division at the Marshall University. And it's a huge honor to host you all in this episode, and I hope that we can have a informative discussion for our viewers on YouTube. So let's dive deep into our discussion, and I'll start with something very basic, that is our university CGPA. So now there's this narrative that's around currently that the university CGPA don't really matter that much, and what matters most is the USMLE test score. So I would want to know the actual reality of this, that what significance the university CGPA holds into a CV or a university application. And is there any cutoff value that a particular person should aim for, that they should be above 3.5 or either above like near 4? So I would want Dr. Maya if you can enlighten us on this.
Yeah, sure. So of course we all can speak from our experiences. So far, like what I have noticed, especially like but during like my math cycle, and also when I used to recommend um, colleagues to my program director for interview calls, I think CGPA do matter in a way because they look overall to your MSPE, but it's like a cumulative approach, like they look at in a holistic way. So even they look at your like the grade book part, because they even see that those grade, like when if you look at your MSP, you see that even the clinical rotations have some grades, so they will look into that. It matters, it does impact, but I won't say for sure that it's like a very powerful cutoff tool, but of course it reflects upon your performance. And I feel in the entire USMLE journey, every single thing has its significance. So you cannot completely say that this doesn't matter. Although the system is forgiving, like if you have a shortcoming and you have overcome that situation by doing or outperforming somewhere else, the system is forgiving. But I feel that if you have a focus in your mind and you want to pursue USMLE track and do really well, nothing should be taken for granted. Even volunteer experiences should not be taken for granted. So that's my
All
two
right,
cents.
Dr. Maya, that was a very comprehensive and very logical answer. My next question to you would be related to that, um, and it's sort of related to your medical school name. As we all are Dow Medical students, or ex-Dow Medical students, and this is something that we often hear that Dow has a huge name in the US. We have an alumni network, and that all helps. But I'm sure our viewers that are not from much famous universities or maybe from private universities, they would want to know that what significance the name of your medical college or medical university holds. So if you could highlight this, that what impact does the name have in your application? Does it help you getting into residency? Maybe Dr. Samrina, you can answer this.
So I'm going to be honest with you. We have so many IMG students applying that the main, chairperson and program director do not know the names of all of the prestigious university names. What has mattered is if we have had one resident and who did really well from one particular university. I'll give you an example. Around 4 years ago, we had an excellent resident from Army Medical College. And because of her, now we have had three more residents who are currently enrolled who are all from Army Medical College. So AMC has had an excellent reputation. Shifa has had an excellent reputation. So far, I mean, this year, I know that I have an AKU graduate who's very keen on coming. So once we have a student who is from a particular university and does really well, that creates a big, huge impact. But just the name of the university in a smaller, relatively smaller, state like West Virginia, it does not matter. What would matter would be if you were, say, applying to obviously Texas. You have so many Dow graduates and EKU graduates, etc. So there, the name would matter more. But here, the name of the university does not matter as much. Your other things that we are mentioning and we are going through definitely will hold more of an impact.
All right, Dr.
What would possibly hold more of an impact would be, say, if I particularly had worked with that medical student for electives, or if I personally had reviewed that application and I am pushing forward for it and saying, hey, this is some person who is from my medical college, has had excellent GPAs all throughout, has been stellar in performance and academics, and I highly recommend him because I'm vouching for him and he's from my medical school, that might hold more of an impact. So it always helps if you have contacts or if you have um, someone else as a mentor or an alumni in a particular residency program from your same
All
school.
right. You explained it really well. That it is not just the name of the college, it's the work that our alumni do and the network and the connection that we are able to build. I'll move on to something, another very basic thing, that is the extracurricular activities. Now, again, there is an initiative that especially for Pakistani students, that the extracurricular activities that they do in our med school journey, maybe it's volunteering experience, and I'm not talking about the elective programs or research, we come to that later on, but the volunteer experience, such as we are organizing a medical camp, we are doing an awareness session, we are teaching disability. So, what importance these extracurricular activities hold? And of course, I've also heard that there's no way for a program director or an admission committee to verify those extracurricular activities. So that's why they don't really matter that much. And what matters is your steps score and research, etc. So I'm talking about what importance these leadership skills, or maybe you're part of a literary society or an interest group in your medical college. So Dr. Kazala, if you could share some light into this.
Yeah, I think I would go off of what Maria was pointing out, that when you're going for residency in United States, you have to have a holistic approach. It has to be, there's not a single factor that affects. It's the whole application, like the whole application, how does that look? And in that, actually, these extracurricular activities do matter. They do matter, that people want to see, especially if you're going to a competitive program, then they want to see that you are versatile, you have like different interests, you have leadership qualities. So anything actually counts, and don't take anything for granted. If you have done a camp, maybe it was just a 1 day camp, mention it. We tend to ignore those things, those little activities, but they do actually matter. So I would not underscore extracurricular activities.
I would like to add one more thing. And so recently when I was looking through the applications, I found that they have changed the application format to just present 10 meaningful experiences, and those 10 meaningful experiences could be anything. It could be your observerships, your electives, your job, your work experience, your volunteer experience. So that forsake on its own shows that they are focusing on quality over quantity. And if you do a very meaningful experience, like if one of your volunteer experience is something which has impacted you, like for example, I recently saw an applicant who actually had this thing as a meaningful experience, that they have been working at a rehab. They have been volunteering at a rehab for stroke victims for like 5 years. So that will count in my eyes. Like if I'm evaluating their application, I think that their dedication to neurology is more than somebody who did 3 months of observership. So, if your volunteer experience revolves around your interest, and then that can literally attract eyes on your application, that is meaningful than your research article, or more meaningful than your observership. So, it's the correct approach and the direction you are leading in. So, yeah, so totally what Dr. Ghazala said, it really matters. And especially when we see applicants here, like we are in a big pond with a lot of like people who have outshined in their institutes, and everybody is very unique. And if you compare us to other international medical graduates and American medical graduates, some of them hold more life experiences. And at that time, that is why I think that the entire application format was changed. And especially in neurology, I have seen there a lot of people for whom neurology is a second residency in US. Like they have done a neurology residency back home. And in my program where I was trained in Oklahoma, usually we used to have like in all batches, we used to have somebody more older and more experienced, and usually they used to have like some year of work at neurology in their home country or a complete residency. Like I literally had a colleague who was a behavioral trained neurologist back in France and then decided to do another residency. So for her, that experience, that kind of outshined everybody, and then she got a match easily. So I feel like I will just emphasize more and more on it, especially now because we have those 10 meaningful experience. So we should be more creative with our applications rather than just following that standard part, that just score high, do some research, do a couple of months of observership. It has to be more like more effort and more work to be put on.
All right. Thank
Thank
you, Dr. Masala and Dr. Maria. Again, you guys explained it in detail and you shared some great examples of how extracurricular holds so much of importance in a whole and holistic application. Dr. Samina, my question to you would be related to it, and if you could highlight any more examples or related to neurology, especially if someone is focusing on neurology. So, what other things they can do in neurology apart from elective and research? Any other extracurricular activity that can help in the neurology match or residency?
So mostly, yes, volunteer work. You have medical students who are volunteering in research labs, sometimes with other meta-analysis or again review articles that they're doing with their colleagues. A lot of the students also come in and they might have published in their own. Countries, but they might present the same data again in one of the other smaller meetings. So that's a good way of actually going to meet other residents and meet other colleagues, is to maybe encourage the students to present at these international meetings. So one advice I would give you guys is just like AAN has the main big meeting in spring. So usually the summer and the fall meetings are usually not very well attended. So I would suggest for the students, and this is what again, I'm going to say the AMC and Shifa students did. They did a whole meta-analysis of autoimmune diseases and autoimmune disorders related with neurology, and they presented a whole meta-analysis of almost 4,000 patients, and they presented it in the summer meeting this year. And these were students who were just coming in from Pakistan, and they were final year med students. So these are great ways, and what they do then is they kind of make connections and then work on projects together. So that's where it really matters. When I'm looking at an applicant, yes, for me, unfortunately, we have this kind of unwritten rule. But if we have six residents each year, neurology, and one clinical neurophys fellow, we try to choose at least 4 or 5 of our own Marshall graduates, because our main purpose is to make sure our neurology graduates from our own medical school get jobs. And then we have 1 or 2 IMGs. So those IMGs have to be spectacular, not just scores or great letters of recommendations, but little things that matter, things that they have done, volunteer work, something like personal touches of their grandparents with ALS or PD, and how they helped, or how they helped manage or navigate their treatments. Then volunteer work with even research articles or anything. One of the students that we had there's a similar institute like we have in Karachi called Darul Sukoon. So he had volunteered in Islamabad in a similar institute like Darul Sukoon, where they work with adults with autism and intellectual impairment. And he would just go there and just see what kind of rehab activities, especially with the therapies, different speech therapies and occupational therapies were being done for those patients with intellectual impairment. And then in turn, those patients, had a lot of them had epilepsy. So we were able to work on a project with epilepsy in the intellectually impaired in Pakistan. And we presented that data around 2 years ago. So this is just simple volunteer work. Again, as Maria had mentioned, if they have if in fourth year or final year, you have decided you want to go into neurology as a student, you have to gear your activities and your interests towards that and work on those projects. And, a great example would be just like our batch worked with our Plex project in Civil Hospital. We set up the whole Plex unit for autoimmune disorders, worked with Dr. Naila and Dr. Kamar over there in the neurology department. So the med students should just go there and volunteer and maybe collect all the data in the last 1 year, how many patients have had Plex, what subgroup there was, how many did had improvement, what are ways to improve the treatments. Are they actually getting all 8 days or 9 days of treatment every alternate day or not? This is just a simple, very simple way of just going and observing and reviewing that data, and then very easy to publish as well. So this is something that I would say: volunteer work, review articles, research, areas of interest, whatever has piqued your interest is going on and pursuing that, especially in neurology or neuro rehab or maybe psychiatry, all the involved fields with neurology, and presenting that.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Kamrina, for such elaborate answer. And your answer was clear enough that how some small ECAs and your passion about neurology can turn into something big, as you explained, your project in civil hospital and how students were able to, join into that. So let's move on to our next segment, and I feel like this would be the most awaited part of this episode, and a lot of medical students have this on their head. That is about the STEP scores, USMLE STEP scores. So as you might know that due to USMLE Step 1 being pass fail now, there is much more importance for the step two score, and a lot of people are worried about doing good and scoring above average scores. So my question to you would be that what is the actual weight of step scores while applying to neurology math? And is there any competitive score that one should aim for? Maybe Dr. Maya, you can answer this.
Sure. So, like, how we have objective measures to assess somebody. So, if I am, like, for example, if like I'm meeting you, Tahir, for the first time, and you tell me that you are great in studies, so how will I assess it? Of course, your score will reflect that. So, I will say that yes, that is a great tool just to know somebody that they did really well in their class. And then that also shows that they were doing really well in their medical school. So it's a tool to assess you. Usually, some programs have a certain cutoff, like, for example, and that's not very high, like, for example, 220 is cut off for certain programs because that reflects that anybody who kind of scores up to 220 is like a above average student in their minds, and that is like applied to like everybody who's AMG or IMG. So they do have certain cutoffs, not all the programs, but yes, most of the programs. And if you have a very high score or you show them objectively on paper that you are a star, of course you are going to be somebody who will get the first dibs, like your application will be more likely to be attended. But having said that, when I was in match, I was somebody with low scores, and I had my scores were not like the good mean at those time. Like I consider like 240s at good ones, but I was having scores in 220s, and that is back in 2014. And I kind of outperformed in my match, which was a surprise to even myself. And the reason I felt that I did really well was my CV was very neurology oriented, because honestly, I always wanted to do neurology. So even as a first year medical student, even if I wrote a letter to editor that was neurology oriented, my entire volunteer experience, all the letters, all the clinical rotations, every single research article I published, either it was psychiatry or neurology, because I thought that I'm going to become a behavioral neurologist one day. So that was like so much evident from my resume that that is my interest, that I was able to match. But also, having said that, my all interview calls were not that I got them like on my own, but they were pulled. I had to ask people like my friends who were doing residency to recommend me to the program director. And when they were passing my recommendation, it was a point made that because I might not have passed the score filters, so if you can please review my resume. So I had a hard time for interviews because of my low scores, but wherever I got a call from, I felt that they kind of outlooked, or they were kind of forgiven the fact that that my scores were low, and they entertained my application. So I will say that if you have scored good, great. Feel that all the like everything is in your favor, and continue to do better. But if you don't have good scores, don't be demotivated, because as I said, the system is forgiving. It might give you some resistance, but everybody is going to look at your application as a holistic picture. And if they find another thing which is very convincing about your interest, they will look into that.
All right, Dr. Maya, thank you so much. I personally speaking, I am someone who's preparing for step two, and almost thrice a week I am troubled by the thought that what if I'm not able to score good enough scores. So thank you, that was a relief there. And so my next question would be related to it. And as you guys know that for USMLE step studies, you're obviously focusing on a focused syllabus as compared to your medical school syllabus. My question would be that for USMLEs and even for residencies, what resources one should focus on if they want to pursue neurology? Is there any recommendation on what, if they want to pursue neurology ahead, they should, focus on few resources more so that they can prepare for neurology better? Maybe Dr. Samina, you can answer this.
Can you repeat that question again?
Uh,
What
yes, sir.
resources?
Yeah, yeah. What resources or what study materials one should use if they want to pursue neurology ahead, and what it's like they want to develop better skills for neurology?
Oh, excellent question. Very good. I would highly suggest trying to get a student membership to the AAN. That has an excellent podcast. So I would highly suggest getting onto AN, and they have a student section for lectures and learning through that. Second great resource, I don't know if it's available in Pakistan or not, is Up to Date. Here, all my students read Up to Date. Like if I'm talking about a particular subject, I give them lectures on a particular set of program, like on epilepsy classification or anti-seizure medications. I tell them, hey, this is what I have taught you today. You go back and just put this in your up-to-date section and read it. The reason why up-to-date is so great as a resource for medical students and even for residents is it's very visual. It's got a ton of research articles, latest current. It is up to date. So it is renewed every 1 month to every 6 months to 1 year on a particular subject. And we have a lot of our own Pakistani graduates as well, who have contributed in up to date as well. Like I was just reviewing the status lecture, and Hiba is at, I think, she's one of the epileptologists over, I think, now at Northwestern or University of Chicago now. And she has reviewed all of that, and she's so active in ACNS. So we have a lot of our own people also writing a lot of these articles and review articles, and it's all current information. So I would suggest getting a format of lectures from a university or a couple of university hospitals like we have for our neurology program. And those same topics, the medical students should read the up-to-date articles on those topics. And then the AAN. The AAN has a student interest group, and I highly recommend it for them. Just like when I have a PGY2 resident rotating for the first time in epilepsy with me, the first thing I tell them is, okay, you don't have access to AES, but go to the department, and the department secretary has a free AES access. And in that, there are 16 modules which you can just go through, which go through the basics of EEG reading, the basics of seizure classification, the basics of anti-seizure medications, mode of actions, teratogenicity, all of that. They go through those 16 modules, and they're, by the end of the month, they are pretty savvy at reading EEGs with me and for patient management. So these are the few couple of resources from an American perspective that I would say. Now, this is all geared towards American perspective. So I'm focusing more on that. Obviously, if they were applying anywhere else, it would be different. But one thing I'm going to say, I'm going to go back to the previous question that you had asked, Tahir, just my 2 cents. As far as scores are concerned, for us, when we are reviewing the application, if the person has very low scores, or God forbid they have ever failed any of the steps, we automatically don't rank them. And the reason for that is not because it is a true reflection of their abilities. Test taking skills are very, very particular. I mean, it's, you do NeuroWorks or neuro boards or those particular, USMLE works and USMLE world questions. If you do 5,000 to 10,000 of those questions, you can easily score in the 240s. That doesn't reflect how good of a neurologist you are. The only problem that we have with poor test taking skills are our program evaluation goes down, because we have noticed the residents who did poorly on their USMLEs tended to fail their right exams or do poorly on the curve of the right exam, and were the ones who did not pass their boards. So if we are just a small residency program of just 6 residents each year, and one of them fails, that brings our percentile down to 80%. That only 80% of their graduates pass the neurology boards, and we can't afford that. We want all five, all six of them passing the neuro boards on the first attempt. So for us, we do gauge test taking skills, and it is a skill. You have to learn this. As med students, yes, I know, Tahir, you're preparing for your exams, but it is a skill. You have to learn it, and there are ways about it. And you should get advice from recent people who scored really well. And the only advice I would say that is do more questions. Do more questions and read the explanations, because 90% of the questions are repeated. And if the questions are not repeated, those exact questions, the questions will be from the explanation from those questions, because it is just those 20 to 30 AN members who are writing these questions, right? So they will ask the same concepts again and again and again. So do more questions, do more questions, do more questions, read those explanations and go back and do more questions. That's what I highly suggest. And don't take the steps lightly. That is, I understand with Maria, it was possible 10 years ago in 2014, but now competition is much tougher. Yes, it is a holistic one, and you can, if you have scores in the 220s, compensate for it with electives and research and presentation. But if you do have a good step two score, because now you just have one score, right? If you do well on that one score, then you're automatically, it just takes you a little bit higher, more chances of getting into the match. And think of it long term. Whatever you, if you learn and you do well on your step two, you're in turn going to do well and do well on your step three. You're in turn going to do well on your in-service exam, on your internal medicine boards, and then the neurology boards. And then every 7 years to 10 years, we have to take research boards. Test taking skills are important throughout life. We have to learn to read the article, grab the key point, and memorize that one line, which is the most important line. And then that line is going to be asked on the exam again and again. So, and this is just a skill that we have to learn, just like journal club. I don't think you guys do journal club. You should start from journal club from fourth year. We have our med students doing journal club and attending journal club with us. So that is, again, a way you read a whole article, which is 10 pages long, but the key points are just 10 to take home from that. So that's one suggestion I would suggest for you to do as well. Start a journal club. And the main thing is, with journal club too, you do review articles from peer-reviewed amazing journals. Like, just do Continuum. Don't do anything else. This is the AN journal, which is published each year. Just do Continuum. They have, neurocritical care. They had this year in July an excellent review article on status epilepticus. Do that with the medical students. All of you read it, discuss it, ask each other questions. You will never forget management of status epilepticus then. So that's, and then uh, after you review that article, you will realize so many questions then later on in life are asked from that article itself. Thank you. Sorry.
All right, Dr. Serena, thank you for your valuable insights. Those were some great answers. You rightly pointed out the importance of the assembly step of scores, and thank you for that. That's a reality check. And also, you suggested some great resources that are much not known here in Pakistan up to date, and the AN lectures. Our viewers would definitely benefit from them. If anyone at this point have to add anything regarding the resources, they can do, or else we move on to. All right, Dr.
Yes.
Abdullah.
So I'm very happy that that my colleagues have actually pointed out importance of getting AN membership. And I also wanted to let you guys know that AN does some annual scholarships as a residents and also for the medical students. Um, and even the residents don't know about it. Anyhow, I was one of those residents who got a chance to get that scholarship. So I was somebody who had chance to go to AN for free, and AN covered my expense. Although the program covered for everybody who goes, but that AN scholarship is like for that specific programs, like specific residents they pick, and then they cover their entire expenditure. And also, like, they give you like a certificate, they have like a wall of fame or something in which they write your name, and it doesn't even take anything. You just have to apply. That's it. You just have to apply with your letter of interest, with your CV, and they will pick you if they like you. Um, and I know that residents have started to do it now as it's getting more and more awareness, but medical students don't know about it at all. And they have a separate section for international medical students. So if you guys can promote this word of mouth, maybe one of you can come to the next spring conference, and it's going to be all covered. It's going to be amazing. You have the name on the name of fame, and plus it's something great on your resume. So do think about those options. And yeah, so that is one of the great resource. And also I feel like, as Dr. Samrina said, that other conferences which are not the mainstream conferences, they're very underattended. Like ANA is ANA's American Neurology Academy is not very attended. So if you guys can promote a word about those conferences, those meetings, try to get those memberships, send your abstracts there. Most of the conferences are virtual now, so even if you guys get an acceptance, it's an issue of like traveling and restraints, financial restraints. You can do the virtual presentations. So that would be something really great on your resumes.
And a lot of the AAN meetings, they have summer and they have fall meetings too.
Mm-hmm.
And again, those are not that well attended. And a lot of people don't submit that many articles or posters for that. So, easy way of getting acceptance is to, again, choose the summer or the fall meetings rather than the spring meeting, because the spring meeting has more than 30,000 people and it's huge. It's huge. So getting acceptance there is a little bit more difficult. But the summer and the fall meetings are usually smaller in size and more chances of getting your abstract accepted there, poster accepted there.
Just going off of that, if you join AN, there are a lot of resources, and even though they're on the website, they're not easy to find. So another one is they have something called Synapse, that is for like their different communities, and there looks like a forum. So there's something there for medical students as well. I'm not sure if there is something separate for international medical graduate, but I know I'm the chair for the epilepsy section, and I know during the meetings they are encouraging a lot about having international members join those sections too. So that would be another place to kind of like just know what is happening, but also sometimes even to network. Um, and then podcasts like AN has, even without joining AN, there are AN podcasts that are available. There are these short, which I even listen to because they are like short, a minute long or 2 minute long, which are very helpful in terms of when you're preparing for your USMLE.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Fatala, Dr. Samina, and Dr. Marika. Again, this was a very valuable and insightful resource that you shared with us. I'm pretty sure that our viewers will definitely benefit from it. Now, moving on, I'll ask my co-host Maria to take over and she'll continue the discussion from it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tahir. Okay, so moving on to our next segment, we'll be diving into the world of electives in neurology. So we all know electives are more than just rotations. They are a way to show our commitment and passion for the field, and also while building connections that can help fun in the future. So let's explore why neurology specific electives are a key element for a strong CV and how they can make you stand out. So starting with the basic question, Dr. Maria, if you'd like to answer this. So why do you think are electives in neurology critical for a strong CV?
So yeah, so as you said, Mariam, um, it's more than just a rotation. Um, there's several aspects to it. So first, like, securing an elective rotation in a good university program kind of shows your interest to pursue and explore the field on its own. And then while you're having the rotation, you get chance to observe neurology in a different perspective, in a different setting, how to see that how neurology and the residency works in America. It gives you a chance to build one-on-one contact with the attending provider, who can also be your mentor for life and who can also provide you a letter for your residency match. And you also get to socialize and make good bonds with co-residents there, who can be your future colleagues. And usually they are really good to put a word for you, like out, like especially for example, like in my case, places where I rotated, I got an interview call. And it's the residents, like you ask those co-residents that, hey, please can you remind the program director that I'm interviewing. And if they like you as a colleague, they might like you to be a part of their residency program. So it's like a very nice networking opportunity. And then at the same time, I feel in elective you have more chance in a very short period to show your professionalism, your nice demeanor. It also gives you an opportunity to find good case reports to write, and that kind of goes along well in your CV. So I think it's like a very good one-stop shop kind of opportunity. And if you are able to secure a good elective in a university program, prepare really well for it, and take it as your, take it as a platform of observation, and take it as a, sometimes it's also advised to say that take it as a nice early interview opportunity, because if you really impress them, it's a good chance that you will get an interview invite.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. But building on to that, the next question that comes into one's mind is that how can students find and apply for these electives? And also, do electives completed in the home country play any significant role? So, Dr. Samrina, if you'd like to take this.
Yes, I think electives in your own home country really, really make a huge impact. So I'm going to be honest with you. My older sister and my younger sister were both AKU graduates, and I was the only one who did not get into AKU. So for me, it was like biggest thing that I would wanted to go and work there. So they were interested in completely different fields, but they had connections there. So even in fourth year med student and final year too, I came to the US for electives, but I did one month electives over there in AKU as well. So that made a huge difference. So at that time, Dr. Nader Ali Sayed had just come back. So I did 1 month elective with him in final year. And in fourth year, I had done it with Dr. Tehseen Muzaffar. And, we were all kind of starstruck because he was the first US return physician in Aga Khan. He had written the chapter on coma in the Washington Manual, and um, uh, his style was very flamboyant, and his teaching skills were impeccable. And his ICU, neuro ICU exam and care was what really got me interested in neurology. So sometimes it's very difficult for all of you students to come to the US with visa issues or financial issues. So I would highly recommend reaching out to these big neurologists and shadowing them while you are there for, sometimes you can work with them for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That really helps, and getting a good letter of recommendation from them. For someone like me, if I see that you have worked with, Dr. Saad Shafkat in Alhan, and he writes an amazing letter of recommendation for you, or Dr. Athar Inam from neurosurgery, I'm going to really be like, oh my God, Dr. Shafkat thought Mariam was an excellent student. I'm definitely going to hold value for his letter of recommendation. So definitely don't take electives for granted. Be well prepared, as Maria said. read up on your cases before you go every day. Go there half an hour early, read those cases. If you don't have EMR, know which topics are going to be discussed, what your topic of grand rounds or noon conference is going to be, and read up on that before. And then other students, that way you make connections with the AKU students who are applying in neurology. Just like you have a student interest group in neurology here, in the same way, there's a whole network of students who are applying, which you should get into contact, and I can help you with that. Shifa has one, and Ames has one, and Army has one, and King Edward has one, AKU has one, and they all help each other, not just with electives, but with study tips for studying for the exam together. Match tricks, which programs are now taking more IMGs. It's all about networking with other students who are applying this year. So all of those really play an important skill. So those electives, not just in Pakistan, would be important, but again in the US, there's some programs that are out in the open which will take in applications, and a lot of them, as students, have the advantage that it's not just an observership; it will be a proper elective. So when I did an elective in the US in Northwestern, I actually had to get malpractice insurance for those 3 months, which cost me a lot of money, but that allowed me to actually examine the patient and present the case and see them independently of the attending. And then I would go and present. So observerships and electives are completely different, and there are ways when you go through human resources and do that. Now, observerships in the US, again through contacts, if you have someone who's, say, in private practice, they can easily take you on, and you can do an observership with them in their private practice and go to rounds with them and all of that. That also again brings an important role, but you just can't just say that, hey, it's not that significant. Like, there's a whole program again through pins. I don't know if you guys are all members of pins, right? So they have, what's his name, the one in Maryland, who takes students, like I think he has like 3 or 4 students every Shahid, Dr. Shahid Rafiq. He has a whole system of organizing these electives, and he has 4 students rotating with him almost every month. So he's one person who easily, and he's in private practice, but he rotates through a couple of hospitals. So but he's very well respected in the community. When I get a student who has worked with Dr. Shahid Rafiq, and Shahid Rafiq has given an excellent letter of recommendation for him, it holds value for me because I know how good he is, and I know his vetting policies for the students, teaching them and everything is very high. So don't think that it's an observership and not an elective. It doesn't hold value. I'm just giving you tips and tricks. uh, email email any program director who's Pakistani on your own. Email the professors at South City or at Ahan or at Liaquat National who are practicing neurologists and learn and go and are US trained or UK trained or Australia trained, and go and work with them, even if it's just to observe. What you might just learn presentation skills from your colleagues, from your AQU batchmates. How are they presenting their case? You might just learn a few, ways of contact or connections with, again, other senior residents who are already doing neurology residency there. Life might take you somewhere else. You might match into the neurology program in Afghan instead of coming to the US, and then come to the US for fellowship. So those are options too. There are lots of options, but it's all about grabbing an opportunity, making the most of it, and learning and building connections.
That's all really encouraging to hear. Thank you so much, Dr. Samrina. You've definitely given us a lot to think about. So now that we have mentioned strong LORs, Dr. Ghazala, my next question will be if you can enlighten us, what does it really mean when we use the word of strong LOR? And also, can you share any personal experiences or success stories from your students who might have rotated with you?
So yes, LORs matter a whole lot after, I would say, after the scores, especially being an IMG. Um, I think when it comes to how are we going to assess the application, it matters. Things that really, really matter are scores, what medical school, and then the letter of recommendations, especially if the letter of recommendations are the first priority, of course, is if they are from US. Um, and in that, it is if it's from a teaching hospital versus a community based setting. Um, and then it is from Pakistan too, especially if they are US trained. So the strong, I have gotten short and sweet, basically. Um, it LOI has to be, because there is so many hundreds of applications that you are reviewing, you don't have the time. So for me, the go-to is I just go to, I have now recognized the pattern. So I go to a certain section and just see what they actually think of the person. And the ones that I have highly, highly regarded are the ones where they mention if there's a academic program, and they mention that either they say something along the lines of, oh, if this person, we would love to have this person as a colleague or as a trainee in our program, but unfortunately, either we don't have a position, or we have a position, we are really going to try to recruit him, but um, we are still supporting his application. So something like that is extremely powerful, because those applications actually just go to the site. They're like, okay, we need to look at it again, even though if they're, for example, medical school, there was some issue in the medical school, we still put them aside that, okay, this person thought that they were really good. So story-wise, my story it was, of course, more than a decade ago. But I got a letter of recommendation from my observership, and the program director wrote me a letter, and he mentioned something like that in my letter, that he would really like to recruit me, and then if he could, but he's supporting my application. My application got uploaded, and within 24 hours, I got a call for an interview where I did my residency from. And as soon as I interviewed, I got a pre-match offer. So sometimes those vouchers, because he was a very known, very well-regarded program director at a good program. So these things matter a lot. And the other thing that we don't recognize is neurology communities is small. We do tend to talk to each other. So if I get a letter and I feel like there's something they may be trying to say, but I cannot understand, because there are ways of expressing concerns too. We reach out to each other and try to find out how the person did at their particular place. Another thing, which was actually being mentioned before, I'm just going to say this because I've seen this happen, is when you are doing elective or observership, don't underestimate the power of the people around you. May it be your kind of like residents, maybe it may be even technicians who are on the ward. I have had experiences that we thought excellent. I was a director of Savai. Actually, I was rotating with that person, and I'm like, amazing, like they know everything, they are participants and everything. And then at the end of the rotation, we were like, okay, we are going to give this person interview call. And we always reach out to the residents. And when we reached out to the residents, they were like, no, this person was very rude, they acted only in front of the attending, and then as soon as the attending would leave, they would leave. So as Maria pointed out, this is an early interview, opportunity for an early interview when you are either doing an observership or an elective. So take everything very responsibly, act very responsibly. You're representing your medical college too, actually. So that also take that into account too.
not just the co-residents, but sometimes we get input from the residency coordinator, and even like the people on the floor, like medical students or international students who are rotating. The stroke coordinator might come in and say, this person was really out of line or did something which was out of the norm or something. So there was one medical student, international medical student, who was given a badge for just that particular 4 weeks. And he used that same badge to come for 2 weeks afterwards just to attend the noon conference and things like that. We did not even interview that person or rank because it shows a matter of ethics. You were technically on paper given electives for just those 4 weeks. Why did you use that badge? Even if you're just coming for noon lectures, why did you use that badge for 2 more weeks without permission or without anything? So it little things, as Uzala said, you're representing not just your moral code and ethics, but you're representing the whole medical school as well. So never do anything outside of the books. If you're there for an observership, don't outstep your boundaries, follow your boundaries, be collegial, not just to your residents and attendings, but to the staff as well, the EEG staff, your coordinator who's coordinating everything with you, your nurses, your technicians, everything. Because no, don't just think of it this way that it's just for the interview. It's in life as well. As an attending, I get 360-degree reviews. Not just my patients evaluate me and my residents and students and my colleagues, but my nurses evaluate me. My EEG technicians evaluate me. My billing person evaluates me. Do I do my notes in time? Do I do my billing in time? Am I congenial and collegial towards my EEG techs, or am I like yelling at them at 2 in the morning because they placed the wrong leads? It's all a 360-degree review in life, in everything that we do.
Yeah. And I would have sometimes, I'm a quiet person, so I can understand. There are medical students who would come, or like observers who would come, who are quiet. They don't participate a whole lot. And then, like, my nurse practitioner or my EG tech one time would come and just put in a word for that person, say, hey, this person was here since early. Of course, when you're an observer, you cannot have like patient interaction by yourself, but they were asking about questions about EEG, and they were so interested, like they're very sweet. Those things matter so much. uh, Another thing, and that may come later on, during interviews. Now interviews are on Zoom or like online portals. Sometimes what happens is, and we make a particular point to ask our coordinator, like whoever is basically handling the break rooms. What happens is, we are impressed with that person. The person is great speaker, appears very collegial, very upbeat. But then we can come to hear from the coordinator is, as soon as the person was taken out of the room, every single time they would switch off their camera and not interact with the coordinator. So you don't have to interact, but switching off the camera is kind of a bad manners when you are interviewing. It's just like the person is like, why are you doing that? So just yeah, like as Dr. Samrina mentioned, program coordinators. I mean, all of these people would give feedback, and we do take that into account because that is a reflection of the person. Because in front of us, we are judging you, so you are going to put your best, but we want to know what kind of a person you are deep down.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sabrina and Dr. Ghazala. That was really, really enlightening, and I really appreciate the detailed response. So let's move on to our next section, and that is also something really important. So we'll be exploring next the vital role of research in neurology. I've already talked a little about it, but we all know that it's not just about the publications or projects. It's actually a way to deepen one's understanding of the field and to demonstrate your commitment to advancing neurological knowledge. So, whether one is aiming to enhance their CV or make a meaningful impact in neurology, research experience can be a game changer. So, diving into the importance of research, Dr. Maria, if you can tell us what type of research experience is most valued in neurology, and does research in a different specialty hold any value when applying for a neurospecific match?
Yeah, so yeah, um, research definitely very important. I think that is one of the very important aspects to show your interest in neurology, your interest in field, and how much you want to be up to date with the current going on things. And there are two different aspects to it. First is like doing a research, and the other one is getting a publication. They're two different things. As a medical student, participation in a research project in which you are doing just a data collection, and maybe that effort never got into publication, but it was still a valuable research experience. We tend to ignore that, and we only tend to put those things which are published on our CV, and I feel that is where we underrate ourselves. I think that whatever you have done has a very important role. So, if you are somebody with interest in research and you were collecting data for a senior for 2 years, and then the senior graduated, you never knew that whether it was published or not, still write that in your CV, because that might help you getting a research spot if you need to, and that might tell people that you know how to collect data. So every experience, like every research workshop you attend, if you do a data analysis workshop or a writing workshop, that is all research experience that is really valuable. And then it comes to publications. So yes, publications, as we all know, and I think when I was a medical student, that was the time when people, including myself, we started to realize that even a letter to editor is publication. So do all sort of publications. Don't underscore like you will only do meta-analysis or you will only do a full original article. Even if you have capacity to publish a letter to editor, do it. But just try to keep doing things, be creative, um, and do be more up to date. Like for example, if there's like I remember when I was applying, Zika virus was on the rise. So I did a few publications around Zika, and they were like letters to editor. They were literally like I saw a original article about it, and then I thought that it would be interesting from a perspective of a traveler, and just kind of gave some perspective on that. So basically, if you do that kind of thing, even that shows that okay, so you read actively and you participate in the literature. Like you read an article and you want to give your feedback, and letter to editor is exactly that. So kind of that is even valuable, because in my interviews I was talking more about my letters to editor than my original articles. And then I realized that why it was because my letters to editor were very relevant. So I feel like, so this is the thing, like all the publications are important. Focus on that. If you cannot publish something in one article or in one journal, don't get disappointed. Kind of rotate. If you cannot submit it to a good journal, submit it to a conference, present it like an abstract. So give it importance. So research is like one subject, but it includes your research experience, which includes everything like workshops, any project you participated in, and then it comes publications, which include all sort of publications. If you cannot get something published, still write it or try to alter the contents and try to send it to a conference and present there. And then it comes to conference and presentations, where I feel that our students are very underrepresented, because we feel that that is something only people in residency do, but even students do that. So present them in conferences. So these are the three aspects to it. And now it comes to the research positions and the postdoc. So that's more of an advanced step. And all your experience, what you are going to learn and gain while you are doing these research, like when you're doing research experiences as a medical student, can help you secure a research postdoc in a lot of competitive fields, including neurology. people with research postdoc, they do outshine. It's their way to show their commitment to the field. They're part of like, some of them are part of like really great trials, like, because I'm from vascular neurology, so I know that Stroke Network have different trials set up in different hospitals. For example, like, if you are a part of a certain trial, your institute is holding a team which is doing their part in that institute, and they want research coordinators, or they want postdoc fellows to run that. So there will be always an empty spot, and they might be job opportunities. But if you have a good research background, you can gain it. And it is great on your CV, because it shows that it is one of your very meaningful experiences. It shows your interest, it gets you a publication, it shows that you want to contribute to science. So, and if you ask my personal experience, I feel that was one of my outstanding components in my resume, and that really helped me getting strong letters of recommendation. So I feel it really helped my and really supported my application. So I emphasize a lot on that aspect.
Great points. Thank you so much for breaking it down, Dr. Maria. So, building on to the discussion, Dr. Samina, I think you've previously mentioned that how seminars and research conferences can help provide students more opportunities to find research, especially in neurology. So, if you can elaborate a little further onto this, what are the different opportunities that can help students?
So I think with research, everyone is trying to do some sort of research altogether. The easiest is always case reports. A lot of these big journals don't take a single case report. They like at least 3 or 4 cases, so that it is a review. Second is obviously the second easiest after case reports are a retrospective analysis. So easy thing for the students would be if you guys have a way of collaborating with your attendings up at Civil, with Dr. Najam, Dr. Kamar, Dr. Naila, find out from them, are they doing, what kind of topics are they doing, what kind of patient population do they have, what is the consensus, what is your area of specific interest in neurology? Is it more stroke? Is it more neuroimmunology? Is it more of the neuromuscular cases with the plex patients? And then start off by just doing case reports and retrospective analysis. Those are the two easiest ways to get publications. Second is building contacts. When you go for electives to Khan or to the US, find out from your other colleagues as well, what are they presenting on, and if you could help in some way, if there's any data collection or statistical analysis that needs to be done. And if you can on the side do any of those courses, none of us really as clinicians have that much time to do a lot of these statistical analysis. So if we're doing a meta-analysis, we love it when a student comes, hey, I'll do this work for you. So we're like, sure, why not? And we're at this stage, hey, I don't mind being last author. Why don't you be first author? And you go on and you've done all the work. You take credit for it. So that really helps a lot if you can help in those projects. Third thing is, again, as letters of editors are good, read more journals. I think one thing that we as medical students and as residents in civil and Dow did not do, and this is where regularly Khan and the Shifa students and Army medical students are all doing, they all have journal club. Don't just rely on obsolete textbooks and reading them and underlining them. Now medical technology is all have to be current. So make it a habit of doing, just like you have taken on this role of doing this whole session, student interest group. Create a neurology student interest group, and once a month have journal club. And in that, don't just do it among the students. Get a mentor. Get Dr. Naila or Dr. Najam or Dr. Kamar involved, have them be your mentor on that particular article, and then review it together. Once you start those reviews with other residents and other medical students, little topics will come up. Hey, this is of interest. This has not been studied before. Or, just we just did a journal club on status epilepticus, and this was the continuum article of July 24. And in that we were reviewing, and then we just came across, oh my gosh, there is a loading dose for Onfi. We've never for our patients done a loading dose for Onfi. For those who are intubated, it's different. They're on Versed drips and ketamine, etc. But even on the floor for acute repetitive seizures, we might just start them off from the get-go, 10 BID or 20 BID. But there's actually a loading dose. So we said, okay, let's start a retrospective review on how many patients actually ever got 60 milligrams of Onfi loading dose. And did that help in breaking the acute repetitive seizures or not? So it's just things that come up when we do things more and more research oriented. But a lot of research projects can be your own ideas. One person might come up with that question, and then you come up with that formulation, and then you think that you're going to go about it. The easiest are these two. Number one, case reports. And if you have a collection of 2 or 3 cases, those are very easy to publish. Second is retrospective analysis. You take all the data from the past 1 year for all the patients, say, who got plex for autoimmune disorders like autoimmune epilepsy or something. Don't do it for something mundane like myasthenia, because that's always done. But something which isn't done routinely, because we have plex in civil now and we don't have IVIG readily available. So for your autoimmune epilepsy patients or autoimmune encephalitis patients, how many got plex and how many did get better? Just do a meta-analysis over the past and retrospective review over the past 2 years. That's very easy to publish. It's data, and I'm going to be honest with you, the AN, especially the summer and fall meetings, they love international contributions, and they love reviews from third world countries. Their articles will never be refused if it is a large, or their poster will not be refused if it is a large enough analysis. And even if it's positive or negative, you can still publish it. Doesn't have to be, everything is perfect and all the patients improved. Even if there was a negative analysis, you can still present it in a poster. The key is you're analyzing the data, you're learning the concepts of statistical analysis, you're learning the concepts of presenting a poster and creating a poster in a logical way and presenting it at an international meeting. So that just builds your confidence, your speaking skills, your comradeship, your connections, all of that later on in life will help you in everything. Yeah.
And you can be creative about what you can do in terms of, first of all, depending on where your goal is to apply, some type of research projects may not be kind of like count that much versus some others. Some of the easy ones, in terms of someone who is coming from Pakistan or another country, because here, for example, you cannot work with me directly on projects because of all these regulations about HIPAA, and you would need there's a lot of process that goes into it. But then there are other things that you can do in terms of uh, still publishable. I had a student who basically did a kind of a questionnaire that sent out to different institutes about how the women in epilepsy perceive their work environment. Something as simple as the practices. So I do, as I had said before, epilepsy. So how different institutes are operating their surgical epilepsy program. So there was it did not require patient information. It was just questionnaire based, but you need a mentor for that. And then for that, of course, networking is going to be very important. But came across a few papers from other countries. Like I think I came across something from Saudi Arabia, and I think one was from India about medical students just looking at um, uh, the for example EEG exposure during residency, or EEG exposure during EEG education during their medical school. So like be creative, and there are other opportunities too. And because um, for um, case reports, as Dr. Sabrina pointed out, they are easy. Case series are preferred. Case reports are harder to publish unless it's a very, very rare something. Um, so that's why case series are preferred, but even case series are hard to publish. Um, so retrospective studies, but these questionnaire-based studies, which can be unique, like especially where you guys are, because there would be studies that would be done here, but not in Pakistan. So there are those opportunities. I would say definitely look into it.
That was really insightful and all great points, Reese. Thank you so much for sharing all this information. So, Dr. Ghazal, I would like to hear your opinion from another aspect. So, what are your views for the two extremes when it comes to research? Like, imagine someone who is applying for match and lacks a significant research on their CV. And also, what about someone having an extensive amount of research experience? Can it be viewed as a potential red flag in any way?
So good question. Again, I think going back to the early conversations that we were having, and Maya pointed out, the application is basically it's still very forgiving, um, and it's looked at as very holistic. A little bit of research, I would say, definitely have some research in there just to make your application look competitive. Um, can it be a lot? So if someone has, and I have had this, like there was 40 publications, and you are like, what is happening? Of course, you like it because in our program, we love research. We have a separate research position, like separate research track for residency. But even with outside of that track, we like to see good research work uh, done by the medical student. So there was one time that there was like a lot of publications, and then you are like, okay, where did they publish? What kind of journals were they? We want them to know their publications. We want to make sure that it's not they know what they're talking about. And in that case, eventually we found out that person actually had a gap year, and in that year he was working with someone and as a research assistant and published that much, so that he was able to explain. Because you're like, how in the world, like with medical school, you are able to like do this much? So that was very impressive because he made good use of his time. So I don't think there is really a red flag if you do a whole lot. But if you're doing a whole lot, uh, it should not be fluff, because that does look bad on your application, because that does someone who had kind of, what they had done was, it was posters. So they were presenting posters. So the same poster they presented in different uh, conferences. So it was like one poster was presented 5 times. That's kind of like, you're like, that does not look good. That does not look very you can tell that the person has not worked that much, but they are just trying to fill up their CV. So yeah, I don't think there's anything like too much research.
Also, I would just like to add one more thing to it. Make sure that your research is oriented to your field. Uh, Sadly, I came to know a few things, very disappointing, but I know that sometimes applicants are getting research just by paying in the project, and they are a neurology applicant, but the research is about like orthopedics. and you are last author in it, and there's several researchers like that. So kind of that stands out. um, Although I'm not in any academic position to evaluate applications, but when I get applications just to review and make sure that everything is fine, even I notice them. And sometimes when I question them, and I learned that yeah, whatever I was thinking was correct. So please make sure whatever you do is directed towards your application, because bizarre pointers stand out.
Yeah. I would just add to that, like in case it has happened because of you, it had a different interest initially, and then you decided to switch, or you got a research position for a year, and that person was doing CT surgery, let's say, you should have a good explanation for that. And you should mention it somewhere in the application. It could be and in a positive way, like it could be in the personal statements we all read. So maybe in a personal statement that, oh, I got a year that I had the opportunity, so I worked with this person for like as a research assistant, and that's led to multiple publications in CT surgery, so that at least it's explained. I have had people who have had OB, like one recent one was a lot of OB papers, and you're like, why? But then she was in her personal statement, even early on, she had mentioned that what I was when I went in, I thought I would do OB. My mom is OB, but as I went through my rotations, I decided that I am more interested in neurology. So even if by any chance either you have done more research on something else, or you are offered a opportunity to do a research but it's non-neurology, I would say take it, make good use of it, um, and then but explain. You should have an explanation for it, and don't get it paid. That don't do that thing that Maria was pointing, please.
Hello everyone, this is Sayeda Taiba and I'm currently serving as president for this group. Thank you so much, Dr. Maya and Dr. Ghazala, for mentioning this thing. So I just want to share my personal experience, and I have this question that I love doing research. And initially, while I was in my med school, I was considering that I would continue research side, not the clinical side. So now I graduated a few months ago, and I'm hearing this thing a lot that you cannot mention this much research in your CV. This is a red flag. And honestly, my research isn't in neurology. So as Dr. Maria mentioned, that it is considered, it is concerning that your research is not neuro-oriented while you were applying to neurology. But as a medical student, we do not get much opportunities that we work only towards the field that we want to continue. So, how can we actually explain this thing in our interviews that we were working towards whatever opportunities we were getting? Or is this actually a bad answer to say that we were just working towards whatever opportunities we were getting?
So
I
I
would
think Dr.
say
Azad, sorry, Dr. Azala already mentioned that she said that that make sure that you explain everything nicely in your resume or in your personal statement. That I, because I was given this opportunity to work, and this is what I learned. So when I'm reviewing a RAS format, you can only put 10 meaningful experiences, and even in those meaningful, those 10 experiences, you have to write what you learned from those. So, for example, if you were doing a research and you want to put it like you were doing a research as a data analyst in one of the projects with CTS, like CT surgery. So you can always write that I was given this opportunity to work in this project as a medical student, and it gave me an idea to evaluate the data. And I was working as this as a I use my statistical expertise for the project. So you can always explain it, and I think that is like experiences are only 10, and then the publication section is all open. You can put whatever you have published. So, whatever you have published, if you want, you can make it relevant, like whatever you published in last 5 years. You can only put that, and you can mention it somewhere in your CV that I'm only going to put publication from the last 5 years. But if you have done a project which is very random and you did it as your medical school days and you feel proud of it, there's no need to take it out. But for example, like what I was trying to say earlier, and maybe if it came across wrong, which is that if you are a neurology applicant and your entire resume is full of publications but none of them is neurology oriented, it's all everything else but not neurology, then I will know two things: either you switched your mind and changed to neurology last minute, and sometimes people do and they say, yeah, I was an internal medicine applicant last match, but I thought that I can match into neurology this year. So that is kind of situation, and it just like so it's a good way to maybe navigate your way through it. And then if you are, and it may happen like you really want to change your mind and apply for neurology next season, but then make your resume, tweak your resume, and take a lot of like fluff out and make it oriented. So and I feel like what I'm hearing from you, Tayeba, I know that I've heard it from some other people too. They said that community programs will not like you as an applicant because you have done too much research, and only university programs might entertain you. I don't think so. That's true, because even community programs, they want somebody to do research because they're very busy. Community programs are usually clinically oriented, small residency programs, very busy, overloaded with patients. So they don't stress a lot on their applicants to have a very good research program because their expectations is more and more towards clinical performance. But if you do have that in your resume, you are offering them this expertise. That's a cherry on top. So you need to be very proud of it and sell it, and that's your selling point. So it's not a red flag. But what you are saying, you're not the first person I heard it, and I've heard it from several people, and I was a little surprised that no, it's not true.
Another thing is like if, for example, your research projects have kind of like are spread out over your whole medical school, and are very kind of like diverse. Like some are more medicine, some are more like ophthalmology. That actually looks good in terms of, okay, so while I was in medical school, my MS3 year, um, I saw this patient during my rotation and I wrote it up. Those that looks actually good because we are like, okay, they find they look for the opportunity to write things up. So so if you have something like that, but yes, as Maria pointed out, if it was like uh, everything was ready for internal medicine and last minute switch, that does not look good, especially if you have applied a year before in internal medicine. um, just be ready. I mean, life happens, things happen. Just be ready to explain yourself. You should have a good explanation, and be confident about it.
This makes so much sense. Thank you so much, Dr. Maria and Dr. Ghazala. I just have one more question. As Dr. Ghazala mentioned, one experience that somebody mentioned 40 research papers on their CV. Sorry. So, what is the number that you would recommend if someone has such great number of researches, like 60, 70? So, what is the safe number of researches to mention on your CV that you are able to explain if you haven't taken any gap year or if you were not doing any research job? Because what I can tell, recently there is a crazy trend about doing research. I don't know, like in Dow, everybody is doing research. As a medical student, the goal is to publish at least 50 articles before you graduate. And this is crazy. But once we graduate, we are hearing things like, no, do not mention this much of research because you will not be able to explain yourself that what were you doing in med school? You were not studying, you were not sleeping, you were just doing research in your med school. So I just want to ask, for a safe side, what's the amount, or what's the number of research that you should mention in your CV?
You know what, rather than the number, what matters is where is it published. If it is published in these predatory journals where they are like you have to pay, those are looked down upon a lot. I would not mention those. So it's not the number, it's the kind of where was it published and what, like, is it worth publishing to, like, what was a topic. So I don't think there's anything you cannot do 50 publications. Sorry, I just do not. I just like good publications. That's very like we get applications, and seriously, like in my program, we are much more research oriented. But I do get applications that have done basically one or two papers. That's it. There may be three posters and two papers, but they are in good, like they are in neurology, they are in like some good journals. And for us, that's like, okay, they are really dedicated to neurology and to education. So the numbers, I don't think that much matters. I really seriously doubt that people who can publish 50 are publishing in a good journal.
Yeah, this makes so much sense. Thank you so much for answering this thing. So, Mariam, you can continue.
Thank you so much, Taiba. So let's move on to our last segment for today, and we'll be focusing on the medical student performance evaluation (MSP), often referred to as the Dean's Letter. The MSP is a key document in a residency application that gives programs a comprehensive view of medical school performance. It's basically not just a transcript, but a detailed assessment that highlights one's academic journey, clinical skills, and professional attributes. So let's dive deep into this. So Dr. Maya, if you can tell us how long should a well-crafted MSP be and what should it include?
Yeah, so um, interestingly, we have a format for MSP, and there's nothing much we can do about it. When we were in match, we tried to change it. It was we were not successful, but I know that our other colleagues in AKU and other, especially in the private institutes, they have a very different format. But I feel our format is not terrible, and we have been flying with the similar format. But unfortunately, it's same. Like for example, if I become program director tomorrow of some program, I will be evaluating the same MSP of my candidate because Dow has the same format. They are not open to any change. It's like literally like a standard generic letter. It's hard, but the thing is that this should come from Dow administration, and I think maybe these mentorship programs and maybe providing our perspective to them might influence that change. That might bring like some fresh air to our MSPs. But sadly, it's just a format which we have been working with, and we have been doing a good job. So it's not even a problem. But yes, there's always room for improvement. So as the name says, medical student performance evaluation. It has every single thing you have done in your career till that date as a medical student, your GPAs, your grade, your rotations, your like any volunteer experience you have done, any electives you have taken. um, it should be more personalized to every student, which is something I will say that that's an effort which you guys can try, and maybe you're successful, and that personalization will definitely add something more value to it because it is reviewed. It is really reviewed, and that kind of sticks with you. It's also part of your fellowship evaluation, like fellowship application. It's also a part of another. If you want to do a sub fellowship, it's going to go through because MSP is going to be the same. It's going to be their standard. In my personal opinion, in our MSP format, the most disappointing thing is a generic dean's letter. I think that is something we can try to vouch to get better. It must be hard for them because there are almost 100 applicants every year from Dow, but every applicant is unique. So maybe at least one paragraph should be there, which should be personalized to each applicant. I also felt this that sometimes like some students ask, and I have seen that people in Aachen do this differently. That like they use their department chair's letter instead of dean's letter, because if they have a department chair of neurology who's writing a better letter, that is going to be kind of that is like dean of neurology in their institute, so they use their letter. But in our situation, I think we just use a generic letter from medicine dean. So if we can ask our like dean of neurology or the head of the department of neurology to change their to put their letter instead of the generic dean's letter from medicine, that would be great. So that is one of the aspects I really feel that we can get some more help, and we can do some innovation, and we should make it look more personalized, because I feel that our format lacks all the extracurricular things. Like if somebody has played volleyball, there's no thing that this person was like playing volleyball in school, and that is something which should be a part of your MSP. And there's like, and I feel like when because I was active in PWA, we were able to make it like official that you should put PWA part in your MSP, but then everybody was using it, and then some of the PW members did not like it, so they took it out. So a lot of like random conflicts. But if we talk to our like if we talk to the principal, we talk to the dean of medicine, and we tell them that we need some innovation, I'm really open to give some more pointers. And I feel like it's a struggle we have into it, and that's a very important aspect, and we should really work on it. So, what do you guys say, Dr. Ghazal and Dr. Samrina?
I would
MSP for me, when I'm reviewing applications, I'm looking at mainly how the student performed in their neurology rotation. That's my key point. So yes, 100%, when they did their electives or their rotations in neurology, I want to see Dr. Naila's recommendations, and where was your curve, where was that student in their performance, in their student examination skills, in their interaction skills, in their skills to stay back and give TNK, or all of those things would play a role in my assessment in MSPs. When I'm evaluating all the students, the first thing I look for is curves, and each rotation in neurology in all the different fields like academic neurology, clinical neurology, neuroanatomy. I look for the curve and those bars. How did they perform in each section related to neurology and psychiatry? If I have one person who's failed in neurology in their second year or first year, and now they're doing neurology, it for me automatically it creates a red flag. I think MSP should be the extracurriculars are mentioned on your CV. So keep the MSP mostly clinical neurology related, because then it gets really, really confusing. I'm going to be honest with you. So keep it. How did you perform in your examination skills, in your punctuality, in your whole rotation, in your end of the month? Do you guys have a neurology test or exam? Like we have the NBME
What?
here.
Yeah, we
Do you
do have
have
what
a
I think,
ward test?
but they're not like how the American medical students have. Like our what tests are very different, and they don't even have a representation on MSP.
So that should be mentioned. The ward test should be mentioned. I think that is more important than PWA, because that ward test gives me an indication how was your interaction with the residents and with the attendings and your punctuality during that whole month. That gives me an idea of 10 years down the road, how are you going to perform? Just, I'm going to give you an example. I have one resident who we had already signed for neuromuscular as an attending for next year. He started fellowship last month, and we don't know what happened, but he quit his fellowship. We are not taking him back. We are not taking him back as faculty. We have breached that contract and broken off that contract, because that it speaks to professionalism. How can you quit on a fellowship just because you don't have enough numbers? We then reached out to the fellowship director. Was he punctual or not? What happened exactly that you just leave a fellowship in just 2 months? There has to be a reason for it, right? So, in the same way, MSP should be a representation of how your performance was as a medical student. Your extracurriculars are separate, but I want to see, did you show up on time every day in that neurology ward? Did you examine the patient? Did you learn examination skills? I mean, did you go with the resident to the and get the patients, when the resident is on call, how many overnight calls did you do? How did you get that patient? I know civil doesn't admit stroke, but you get neuromuscular crisis, you get You get epilepsy patients. You have all of those other subspecialties. How did you bring that patient in? How much did you perform? How many cases did you present? What new things you learned? How were your presentation skills during that months of rotation? So for me, the MSP should be a representation of that, and your ward exam, even if it was a clinical OSCE. For us, our ward exams were clinical OSCEs, like Tyrosen or all the other professors would give us a case, ask us to present, and then assess, and then they would give us a grade then after that. And there was a cumulative score, clinical separate, and then the 50 questions we would all have to take at the end of the ward test. So that should be part of the MSc.
I would add to that I think it looks like there's very little you guys can do without, because it's not in your hand. So I would not stress too much over it. So a few things. It would MSP something that every program would look at it differently. Like for Dr. Samarina, she looks at the neurology. For us, we do look at the initial part where it is like characteristics of that student, like readership skills and research efforts and anything extracurricular. We look at that section, because then we go to the section where there is like particular wards and how did they do over there. But we also are very aware of that different medical schools do it very differently. So it's not a deal breaker. We do, as Dr. Sabian said, yes, we would go to that neurology section and see how they did in the ward and what the comments were. We also look at other wards and how they're, for example, someone in OB and they failed it. So we would read why they failed it. Was there professionalism issue? And we would discuss that, hey, yes, they did very well in neurology and internal medicine, but they were being unprofessional in OB rotation. And is there anything there? And we would put a little bit more we would pay more attention to the LORs, basically, to see if there is anything that is about professionalism in their LORs. So it looks like very little that you guys can do about MSPE. So don't stress too much over it. As Maria said, if they would change, which I highly seriously doubt would happen anytime soon. The other thing that we look at is the core, like the students' rank among their colleagues. So like, are they top quartile, bottom quartile? Where do they stand? So again, that speaks of how they did academically.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ghazala, Dr. Samina, and Dr. Mala. That was a really enlightening session. And before I do the ending note, if there is anything that you'd like to add on anything or any part of today's episode.
I would just say best of luck. Keep persevering. You would get there. It just takes dedication and persistence.
Thank you so
I
much.
would say good luck, and I appreciate all of you guys to take on this enterprise. I'm going to be honest with you. When I was a medical student, I was not this enterprising. I had no clue at that time. I had no one to guide me or no one to really tell me how things were about. So the fact that the three of you, or at least so many of you, have taken on this responsibility is going to really help. Second thing is, one more advice: you learn so much by teaching. So I don't know, are all three of you MS4s or fives or what? Which year are you?
Okay,
And
so I recently
yeah.
graduated. I am 2024 graduate.
And
And
Tahir is
Marianne?
a fourth year student while I am in my final year right now.
Yeah, so you learn so much by teaching and guiding. So get more of the junior students involved. And one thing that I would highly suggest is comradeship. Just go on to the neurology ward and the residents there who are there. First, start off, I think, once a month or once every 2 or 3 months. Start off with Journal Club, because that really helps a lot in building connections. But just a little advice. But thank you for arranging this. This was very insightful for me as well. Thank you. And good luck.
Yeah, all the best to you all, and thank you so much. And as Dr. Sabrina mentioned, it was very insightful for me as well. And if there's anything I can do, please feel free to reach out. And you guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samrina, Dr. Ghazala, and Dr. Maya for taking out time and for actually agreeing to to be part of this. The support means a lot, and I am very sure that this session will help a lot of candidates applying in future or this year as well. So yeah, thank you so much. Your support means a lot. Bye bye.
Mm.
So
Perfect.
we're wrapping things up. Thank you so much.